Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Robert Thompson, and today we're going to do a deep dive on my childhood and what shaped my political views into being what most people would consider a far right extremist, radical conservative, which I don't agree at all. I think I am just a normal conservative, but nonetheless, everyone has the right to their own opinions. Um, so I want to start this video off by apologizing if my video quality is not tremendous or my vocal quality is not great. This is a $100 microphone and I'm using my $2,000 Galaxy Z Fold 7 to record it. So I hope this is at least good enough so that people don't just click off immediately and are like, oh my God, this is horrible. I hope you can listen to it because the story I'm going to talk about today, it affects so many people my age. So I'll just start off by saying my name is Robert Thompson. I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in January 31st, 1993. A lot of people only know Pennsylvania from two major cities, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Now, me, I was about 2 hours east of Pittsburgh and about 2 hours west of Cleveland. Oh, sorry. We were 2 hours from Buffalo, 2 hours from Cleveland, 2 hours from Pittsburgh. Sorry, I'm a little geographically challenged. Nonetheless, I grew up in one of the poorest zip codes in the United States. And that's a phenomenal fact that I didn't even know was true until I started traveling and getting on the internet and I saw somebody post it and I double checked it, fact checked it by going on Google and making sure that was correct. And growing up, and now that I've experienced what like normal middle class life is, I know that I grew up in a very destitute position. Now, I will say I'm not like the trying to cry online. I'm not, trying to make people feel sad for me. I'm not saying that my position was worse than the next person's position whatsoever. I'm just here to tell you my story and what shaped me to have these, what some people would call radical ideas on my conservative nature. So growing up, I grew up with a single mother. My dad was involved with my life, but he was not in the home. My mother and him got divorced when I was about 6 months old. Apparently, my dad had a drug problem with cocaine and crack, and that problem persists into today. I'm not going to edit this video because I don't have editing skills. I might chop it up a very little bit if I misspeak or something like that, but I'm going to try to just riff and tell you guys my story, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Nonetheless, back to my story. When I was about 2.5 years old, my mother hooked up with a black man and they ended up having a child together. And there came my sister. My sister is half black and half white, and I love her to death. Even to this day, she's a phenomenal person. Nonetheless, after my dad, who is clearly white, as you guys can see what I look like, my mother had an affinity for black men. Still to this day, my mother has not dated a white man at all in the 32 years that I've been alive. So that's just a little relevant point, and I'll tell you why that point is relevant here soon. We grew up in the ghetto, and my grandparents were somewhat good people. My grandmother on my mom's side is a devout Christian. She is still to this day. Unfortunately, she passed away from COVID in 2019, but she is still today my role model, especially for her Christian personality. I mean, this woman was a diehard Christian. She took the words of the Bible and lived that every single day, despite my grandfather being verbally abusive and just being the breadwinner, but still being culpable for everything that went wrong in my grandfather's life. And unfortunately, she passed away. And now I just have to live with the memories. And I'm sure looking back, she would be very proud of me today. Nonetheless, I grew up basically a smart kid, a nerd, as some people might call it. I was very interested in learning. I learned so much stuff all the time. I was enamored with learning, but I also just so happened to be a social butterfly. So I was the class clown. And that's not typically something you would see from someone who's intelligent and does really well in school, than being a class clown. But I'll explain why this happened, and I think there actually might be a lot of people who can put themselves in my shoes or have actually lived this themselves. But we were not rich growing up. Like I said, we lived in a very poor area. My mom didn't make much money, and she was going to school part time and working full time and raising me and my sister by herself. So she didn't have, a ton of time to really grind the ladder of you know, the corporate ladder and make a tremendous amount of money. So we had to grow up with what we had. That therefore, I went to a public school. This school is called Edison Elementary School, named after Thomas Edison, and it resides in the east, lower downtown east side of Erie, Pennsylvania. And because I was already so smart and I had learned so much just from being at home and I catch on to things fast, what would happen was I would sit in the classroom, I would learn what the teacher was teaching, and I might even go a little bit ahead of the teacher. And the entire class, and I mean 98 to 99% of the class, would not understand it, and they would have to be taught this one subject for the entire time frame of the class. And me, okay, I got it, let's move on to the next topic. So it got to the point where I learned the material. The teacher was being very redundant and trying to teach all the other students things that I had already gotten. So basically, I ended up goofing off. I would sit there and draw, or I would crack jokes. And growing up, I had a ton of friends, a lot of friends. I was a goofball, I was a class clown, and I was very intelligent. Nonetheless, I grew a resentment for school because I was so far ahead of the class all the time, and I had nothing to fill my time. We didn't have cell phones in 2001, 2002. People didn't have computers in the classroom. There was really nothing to keep me occupied other than to draw or to talk to my friends or to, googly eyes at women in the classroom because I had crushes on them. But yeah, that's what happened. Nonetheless, my mom managed to go through a bunch of different men actually as I was younger. There were constantly stepdads, black males, coming into my household, and often those individuals did not have a career. They either sold drugs or smoked drugs or did both. And they were verbally abusive and physically abusive to my mother. And I witnessed this with my own eyes from basically the age of 4 on up. I remember being like 5 years old, 6 years old, going to a party at like a house party with my mom where all of her friends were, all of her white friends, and all of their black boyfriends. And this was in the heart of the ghetto. This is like, these parties were so thug, it didn't even make sense. Like, most people would be terrified to walk into one of these parties just looking around. These were all gangsters, they were all drug dealers, they were all dangerous, they were all on drugs, and more importantly, they were also all very drunk. I still remember walking into a guy's house, to a house party with my mom. My sister's 2, 3 years old. I'm like 5 years old. We walk in, and the first thing we see is this stumbling, like he looked like he could have been like Puerto Rican and black, like a mix of Puerto Rican and black. He walks into the living room, literally faints, collapses from being so drunk, falls onto the table, and the table completely shatters right there in front of us. It's absolutely nuts. My mom had a pretty bad drinking problem, and I don't know how she was able to go to work full time and go to school part time, and still every weekend she would manage to go out and get drunk and have her friends over, blah, blah, blah. We moved from house to house growing up. We never owned a house until I think I was in eighth grade. And so we jumped from house to house, renting, And often that was very difficult for me because I grew up resenting change because of that very reason. I was finally getting comfortable in the place that we were living, and we were just jumping around from place to place, and I wasn't able to keep the friends that I had in previous neighborhoods. Um, it was something that I don't recommend anyone to put their children through if you don't have to. Nonetheless, growing up with these black men in my house, these grown drug dealing men, I started to see very quickly that these were not good people. These individuals were incredibly disruptive. They were so ignorant and rude and ghetto. And my mom would put on this facade of this ghetto behavior when she was around black people. And she doesn't do it anymore as much, but growing up, she would literally have two split personalities. Part of her personality would be like if she was just with me and my sister, she would act like a completely normal human being. She would speak with proper English grammar. She would just not act ghetto at all. And then as soon as we got around black people, you could just see it in her eyes. She completely transitioned into this new person where she spoke ghetto and trashy, and it was quite disgusting. And I grew to have this disdain for my mother because of this. I always knew she was two-faced, and I didn't know why. Nonetheless, what ended up happening is I started getting very angry at home. I started punching holes in walls and, watching my mom be hit by grown men. It was just awful. I remember pulling up to a house of a babysitter, this guy who was babysitting us, who was honestly such a terrible person. I don't know why my mom would ever trust someone like this to watch me, but this man, I remember I was sitting in the passenger seat. I was probably about 8 years old. My sister's in the back seat, or actually, I don't even think my sister was there at this time. It was just me and my mom. And my mom walked up these stairs. I stayed in the car, and I see this man who was my babysitter, this big old fat piece of shit, basically grab my mom's purse, reach inside of it, take her wallet out, and then threw my mom's purse in the middle of the road. My mom then went to go pick her purse up, and as she was doing that, this guy, his name was Manny. I don't know what his real name was, but we called him Manny. He walked up to the passenger side window where I was sitting, and he had a hammer in his hand, and he literally smashed the window with me in the car. Now, I'm 8 years old. I don't even know what to do. I'm terrified of this. And I hate to say it, but this was not the only time where my life was put in danger because of the people my mom chose to associate with. It's just not. Let me hit my vape. This is a hard story to tell, and I'm going to get into some very juicy information soon. So please stay tuned. Another story I have, and I'll just tell it like this. It makes more sense for me to just tell stories and instead of trying to be chronological with the whole thing. I remember being at that party I was telling you guys about where that guy fell through the table. We ended up staying the night there, and then we ended up having to walk home the next day. And it was probably like 3 blocks away. It was the middle of the night. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was still dark. My mom has my sister in her hands. Mind you, she's a literal baby. It's kind of cold. I imagine it was like fall. And we're walking home. She gets a phone call. She answers it. I'm walking next to her. And this conversation doesn't seem like it's going well. I'm not going to pretend like I can recall the conversation, but it's not going well. And we get to our apartment and we see that there's a car out front, and it was my mom's ex-boyfriend, Felix. He got out of the car and started chasing us. Mind you, I'm a little kid. I'm like 5 years old. My sister's 2 years old. My mom's holding her. We get inside of our apartment, and my mom just sits down against the door, shuts it, locks it, sits down against it. He's pounding the door. I'm also sitting against the door, trying to stop him from coming in. Nonetheless, I wasn't able to do that, obviously. He didn't end up getting into the house. I think he finally decided that it wasn't worth it and he left. But this is just another example of something that I went through. as a child that I didn't deserve to go through. So growing up, my father actually seemed like a pretty good guy. I didn't know he was on drugs whatsoever. My mom would still take me over to my grandparents' house. Yes, my dad still lived with my grandparents, and I'll explain why shortly. And he was a nice guy. They took me hunting, they took me fishing ever since the moment I was like 4 years old. So when I kind of had this dichotomy of I was living with my mom and I experienced this ghetto, trashy lifestyle, which even when I was a kid, I thought was just disgusting. Like, why is life like this, you know? And then I would go over to my grandparents' house, which was the polar opposite. They listened to country music. My dad listened to rock and roll. They were just regular people. They spoke proper English. They weren't ghetto. They didn't act ghetto. They didn't change their personality based on who they were around. They were authentic, country, amazing people. And I have very fond memories of going out fishing with my dad and my grandfather and my grandmother and my cousin Ashley, who was my first cousin. And it was some of the best memories I've ever had. And still to this day, I take some of those hobbies that we did and I still do them today. I love to fish. I love to go out and hunt. I love to be outdoors. And it really shaped me into the person that I am today um, overall. Nonetheless, my grandmother on my mom's side was also my grandfather. They were just very good people. They had good jobs, they worked very hard, and they just acted like normal people. I say normal people, but like if you're in a middle class neighborhood, like for instance, I'm in a middle class neighborhood in North Carolina right now. You just walk around and talk to people. That's what normal is in my book. Speaking proper grammar, and nobody just like trying to fight each other and people rolling dice on the corner, gambling. It's just things that don't happen in middle class neighborhoods. Trying to think of some other stories. So, well, I'll just skip past that. Just know that I had a very hard upbringing, and I witnessed domestic violence and from my own mother, and it was very hard. Nonetheless, I think I was about probably 9 or 10 years old, and my mom found a boyfriend in the jobs that she was working at as a drug and alcohol counselor. This man's name was Leon, and he ended up being a pretty good guy. It was the first time I met a black adult man who was just a normal guy. He wasn't real ghetto. I mean, he was a little bit, but he was a good person, you know. In his heart, he was a good guy, and he had two children, Dion and Noel, and those were my stepbrother and stepsister, and they were a different story. Um, they were raised by Leon because their mother was a crackhead and still probably to this day is still on crack, and they had it hard growing up, and you could see it in the way that they grew up and in the people that they were. Actually, the first time I was left alone with Noelle, who was significantly older than me, she had tried to tell me to do something, and I didn't know this woman at all, and I grew up pretty hard, so I was like, no, I'm not doing what you say, you're not my mom. And she punched me square in the nose. My nose started bleeding. It was the first time I think I've been like physically assaulted by somebody, just for speaking and saying something that she didn't like. Nonetheless, growing up in a predominantly black neighborhood, I suffered from so many assaults. It's unbelievable just because of the color of my skin. I was into basketball because that was the hobby that people did in the ghetto. It was basketball. You just played basketball. My stepbrother at the time was 6 feet 6 inches tall. When he was in eighth grade, he was like a basketball star. So growing up, I played basketball. I'd go to basketball courts by myself. This was a different time when you could send a 12-year-old to the basketball court and not worry about him being kidnapped. And if I played well at all, if I played well and I was against black people, which 99% of the time I was, they would literally conspire together to jump me, to punch me in the face, to throw me to the ground, to kick me in the head. This happened so many times over and over. I was assaulted, profiled for being a white person, and literally jumped for being white. So To all the people that think that I don't have the experience to speak on the Black neighborhoods and the real problem in the Black community, I would say that you probably didn't even grow up in a Black community, so you could keep your mouth shut. If you weren't a white person growing up in a Black neighborhood in the late 90s, early 2000s, your opinion is completely irrelevant. You don't know how it is, you don't know what it was like, so don't speak on it. And for those people who did grow up like me, feel free to comment and tell me your story in the comments. I would love to reach out and connect to my audience. Um, Nonetheless, these assaults happened all the time. And as I got older, I started switching the person, basically becoming the person I wanted to be. And that was due to having exposure to a different standard of living by going into middle school and being around friends who grew up in neighborhoods that were much more privileged than I was, and also having the benefit of my grandparents on both sides of my family not being extremely wealthy, but at least being lower middle class. And it exposed me to this sophisticated way of life that I did not see. It was completely non existent in the Black ghetto community. Non existent. I did not meet a single person, a single Black person in a Black household that I would have deemed as a sophisticated, righteous person. It did not happen. Still to this day, I cannot look back and have one memory of a decent family that I met. And that'll tell you everything you need to know. Now, growing up, I've always heard, especially living in the Black community and going to predominantly Black schools, that the Black people were oppressed. And slavery, I started learning about slavery and all these things that happened to them. And yeah, it was terrible, but it was something that wasn't going on now. And I'm sitting there in the back of my head thinking, I'm being oppressed. Like I'm living in a Black community and they're oppressing me. Now, granted, I was accepted by a lot of Black people too, but people that I didn't know, they would jump me specifically because of my skin color. And eventually it hardened me. I learned how to fight back because I wasn't just going to keep on getting beat up and just be a scared little boy my whole life. No, eventually I started fighting back. And now I've gotten a lot smarter. I will flee from a fight if it's unnecessary because, well, obviously I don't want to partake in violent activities at all, even if they deserve it. I don't want to get into an altercation with somebody because I've seen so many people lose their life. I'll give you an example. Growing up, this person, I can't remember his real name, but he went by Pooh. He got shot in after eighth grade summer. He's in eighth grade, just graduated eighth grade, and he was shot and killed because he was out gangbanging. This is just what people did in that neighborhood. When you were in an impoverished community, that's just the way it was. Now, I will say, when I got to eighth grade, well, actually, when I got to sixth grade and I went to middle school, my mom had purchased a house on the Upper East Side of Erie, Pennsylvania, right next to a place called Ghetto Mart. Nonetheless, this area was nowhere near the area I grew up on the Lower East Side. It was way more respectable. There was still your occasional crime being committed, but it was nothing like the Lower East Side of Erie. And I went to a school called Joanna Connell, and that's where I think I met maybe two individuals who grew up from decent households, who their parents were decent. They took pride in education and speaking like a normal human being and pull your pants up, stop sagging, stop looking like a thug, don't act like a thug. Parents that would discipline their children for these type of behaviors versus the parents where I was from who would encourage that behavior. And it just goes to show the class difference. The people who lived in that area, they were a different breed of people. And it wasn't that they lived in that area that caused them to be a different breed of people. They were a different breed of people, which propelled them and motivated them to be in a neighborhood as such. So That's basically my background about my childhood and where I got some of my views about the Black community. That most of the problems in the Black community come from their culture, just how they act, what they think is acceptable and what they think is not acceptable, that they take pride in materialistic things and they're all struggling. These individuals would have brand new sneakers on, $100 pair of sneakers, and they're living in literally a dumpster. So it was just fascinating to me to go into a neighborhood that had much more money. I mean, it wasn't even debatable. These individuals in these middle class neighborhoods had much more money, but they didn't dress like it. They granted they had a nice car and a nice house, but they weren't spending their money on things that were not important, like the newest shoes out. And the people who did do that, they had more than enough money where they could have the nice house, be responsible with their money, but also afford the nice amenities in life. So, for anyone who thinks that black people can't be racist, well, you're just clearly lying to yourself and you're lying to everyone else. Nonetheless, I had a pretty troubled childhood and it turned me into a bad person. I did a lot of bad things. I robbed people. I did things that I thought I had to do in order to be successful because that was literally the experience I had growing up. My role models, which I had really no choice. I was a child. I didn't even know there were other ways to live. I was boxed into the area in which I grew up. They were bad people. They were people who were drug dealers. And believe it or not, the drug dealers in my area, the individuals who sold drugs and did drugs, they had more money than everybody else. So it was only natural for me to look up to those people and to think like, oh, if I want nice things and if I want to be free from the 9 to 5 grind and wasting my life away, well, I could just go out and rob somebody or start selling drugs or start doing this. And it was obviously a terrible thing. Nonetheless, I had so much resentment for my family and the way I grew up that eventually I became what you would call like an anarchist. I started instead of I threw the basketball away and I picked up a skateboard. I was like, I'm going to participate in activities where the majority of people are white and civilized and that's what I did. I started specifically looking for white friends and doing white activities. And I took up skateboarding and I became incredible at it. This is going to be a common theme that you hear throughout the story is when I pick up something, I get good at it really fast. I don't know why. I just I'm just a natural born person who could just pick up things extremely fast. I picked up the guitar really fast. I picked up skateboarding really fast to the point where I was almost like I was almost professionally graded as a skateboarder. And I picked up other sports, even basketball. I picked it up and I was, better than your average person immediately. Today I play pool and I like to fish and golf. And all of those activities, extremely hard activities, I picked up faster than most people and I got better than most people. And that's just God gifted me with the natural ability to pick things up fast, I guess. So now we're going to touch into where the story really takes a turn. This is going to be the story of how my life basically got flipped upside down and my life was ruined without me ever having a chance. So, growing up, my mom wasn't very strict. She grew up, obviously, she was not a great person, so she didn't have the same morals as most families do now. She allowed me to date at a very young age. She allowed me to leave the house and not tell her where I was at a very young age. And that caused me to, like I said before, I was very popular. I had a lot of friends. I never had a problem with the ladies. I had like 100 girlfriends between middle school and high school. I was literally just running through women at the time. And I thought that was normal. Girls liked me, I liked them, so I date them, and that's just how I was. Nonetheless, I started having sex at a very young age. I started smoking weed at the age of 11 years old because that was normal. Everybody smoked where I was from. That was just normal behavior. And when I was 17 years old, I was hanging out with a group of friends, which were from a definitely a much more privileged area than I was from. And they went to a school called Collegiate Academy, which was like a school where smart kids went. And I was friends with these individuals. They were the type of people that I was like, oh, this is who I want to be. I want to be like these people. So I started to dress like them, and I already knew how to speak intelligently, so that wasn't very hard. And I ended up making friends very quickly, and they invited me to a party. And I don't remember exactly the theme, but I remember all these girls in like flannel jackets. It was like a lumberjack theme type thing. And I remember walking in and thinking, holy shit, all these girls were so beautiful. Like, I'm sitting here thinking like there's no way that these all these girls existed this whole time, and I'm in a school where I'm just gonna say it, there were not a lot of pretty girls. There was like three pretty girls in the entire school when I was in elementary school and middle school. So, and even in high school, there was not many pretty women. There was like 10, and I dated 95% of them. These women were different. These women came from a school called McDowell and Collegiate Academy. And when I tell you these girls were beautiful, it was unbelievable how pretty these women were. Everybody looked good. And I'm not gay, don't even go there, but the guys were attractive, the women were attractive. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not top of the dating pool. Like, I'm struggling there. I'm scared to talk to these women. They're so attractive. And I was not the type of person to be scared at all to talk to women. So, nonetheless, I ended up just kind of sitting against the wall. I pulled the old bob my head a little bit, just kind of stand up against the wall. And I would wait for a girl to approach me, in which the girls were probably looking at me like, who is this weirdo? But this is how people dance in the clubs. Like when you're in from the ghetto and you're going to these dance parties and stuff, like most of the dudes were literally just up against the wall, some girls like twerking on them. That's just how they dance. So eventually towards the end of the night, I was actually leaving. I was just about to leave, and looking back on this, it's the craziest thing ever. This girl, this pretty blonde girl, now she was very very pretty, but she was a little bit bigger. And when I say this, I'm talking like 130 pounds. I'm not talking like 250 pounds, like 130 pounds, bigger than most girls were in high school. But she was so pretty, like beautiful blonde hair, blue eyes, dressed to impress. I would say definitely just as pretty as all the other girls that were there. And she hands me her number with her name on it, and she says, "You're cute. Give me a call sometime." And I'm thinking like, "Let's go!" Like I'm like, "Yo." I'm in there like this is the best day ever. And nonetheless, she ended up leaving. And we all went to like this girl's house and spent the night. And I'm with my two other friends. They both got girls with them, and I'm by myself. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it was kind of a lonely experience. And I was like, damn, like I'm not that dude. I thought I was that dude because where I grew up, I was that dude. There was not much competition for me. There was some, but nothing much. Like it was just crazy. And these people didn't know who I was. They didn't know I had skills on the skateboard. Like they didn't know anything about me other than how I looked and how I was dressed in that moment. And I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I didn't have amazing clothes. I wasn't shopping at Abercrombie and Fitch. I probably had on some like even right now. Granted, me and my wife are definitely middle class, and I still shop at Old Navy. $7 t-shirts, $10 pair of sandals, nothing much. Um, but I met this girl, and eventually I ended up hitting her up, and she came over to my house. And this was something that my mom had allowed. I had literally had sex with women in my mom's house well before I was 18. So I told my mom I was having a girl over. She didn't blink an eye at it. The girl came over, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. The girl brought Burger King with her. And I'm like, okay, most girls don't eat in front of dudes. This girl, I swear to God, she sat down on my couch and she shoved this cheeseburger in her mouth. And that was foreshadowing. I'm going to tell you right now that was foreshadowing. She shoved this cheeseburger in her mouth. She demolished this Whopper and these fries. And then I remember starting to kiss her, make out with her, and all I could taste was Burger King. Um, and then eventually one thing led to another, and we started having sex. Now, at this point, I had had sex with a number of women, and I'm not here bragging. I think it's disgraceful and disgusting that I was this person, but I was under the age of 18. I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't know any better, and I'm going to stick by that. But I had experience, so I knew how to pull out. But something about this situation, I don't know if it was the position we were in, but I remember not pulling out. I just let it go. And immediately I like pulled out and my brain just kind of like went crazy. I was like, what the hell did I just do? Oh God, dang it. All right, sorry about that. My wife walked in unexpectedly. She had an interview. Nonetheless, I'll jump right back into the story. Basically, I in that moment, like I knew I messed up, and something told me, like, dude, I just got her pregnant. Like it was the first time I've ever done something like that, and something just told me this was not going to end well for me, and I had no idea. Sorry, burping, how bad it was really going to get. So basically, some time passed and I ended up texting her again and we met up again. And at that time, we were just kind of hanging out. We separated and then I went to go meet my friend Jake at his house. And I was talking to him and he was like, hey man, you know that girl you were talking to? Like, she tried to give me head in the bathroom at school. And they went to school together. So I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, swear to God. And granted, me and this girl had not had a conversation like you want to be boyfriend or girlfriend. It was nothing like that. It was clearly just casual. We never even mentioned like something serious. So I was like, okay, well, still, I'm gonna cut ties because I don't do that. That doesn't sit right with me. And I trusted my friend, and he was not lying to me. So nonetheless, I just stopped talking to her. Fast forward about 8 months. I'm sitting there. Mind you, I have not talked to this girl. I've not heard her name. I've not seen her anywhere. We go to completely different schools. I'm probably dating someone else at the time. I've got a whole life going on. And I had just graduated high school. And I just had this weird, random moment where it just hit me in the head like, oh my God, I think you have a baby. And I'm sitting there like tripping out. I can't explain it to you guys, but it was almost as if like another, like a spirit or something put this thought into my head because it was so random, but something just told me like you got, and specifically like you got her pregnant that day and you have a baby. And it really struck me. So what I did was naturally I got on Facebook and I searched her name. I still remembered her name and there was no results for her at all. I could not find her anywhere on Facebook. And this was very weird because in this time, this is 2011, everybody's on Facebook. There's literally not a single person that I knew that wasn't on social media. And I know that previously she was on social media. So this struck me as odd, but I just kind of let it go. I was like, well, I'll just wait and eventually I'll either run into her or she'll pop up. So I think another 2 months passed by, and I was sitting there on Facebook, and boom, she pops up. People you may know, Caitlin. Okay, I'm not going to say her last name, but her name was Caitlin. And nonetheless, I see it and I'm like, holy crap. I click her profile, and what do you know? Her cover photo shows her and a baby, a little boy, and her profile picture shows her and this baby, this little boy, blonde hair, blue eyes. And immediately I felt my heart skip a beat. My stomach dropped down to the floor. My jaw was just hanging down and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, like there's just something about it. But when I saw this little boy, I knew he was my son immediately. I didn't need a DNA test. I was completely convinced that this was my son. So I at this time, even though I say I had a disdain for my mother, um, this was something that, kind of went in waves. Eventually, when we got into high school, my mom stopped hanging around those groups of individuals. She stopped dating, and it was just me and my sister and my mom, and she was done with school. She had graduated from school. She went on to be a drug and alcohol counselor at a rehab local in Erie, Pennsylvania, and she was slowly rising up the ranks to become a director. And she ended up buying a house, so we had a stable house now. There was no men coming in, so I started to then again, have a deep love for my mom again. And even though we had our issues, I still loved her a lot, and she was the cool mom where you could tell her anything. If you did something, my mom knew I smoked weed. I told her about that. I told her about girls. I told her literally everything. So I called her to the dinner table and my sister too, and I said, "Hey guys, I think I have a baby." And she's like, "Shut up, you're lying." I'm like, "No, I'm not lying. I really think I got this girl pregnant." And she's like, "Why do you think that? Why?" And my sister's like, "Oh my God, really?" So I pull the phone out and I show my mom the picture, and she says, "No, no, that's not your child." My sister, on the other hand, is like, "That's definitely your baby. What are you talking about, mom?" And my mom was, I think, was more in denial than anything. And she said that didn't look like me as a baby. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've seen pictures of myself as a baby. This child looks just like me. So my sister went, grabbed a baby photo for me, put it side by side. It was a no-brainer. Me and my sister both knew in that moment that was my child. So eventually I reach out to her, obviously, after I have this conversation with my mom. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, I grew up without a father, basically a father in my home. And even though I saw him when I was younger, when I was, basically from when I was like born to when I was like 13 years old, there was a period of years where I basically didn't even talk to my dad. He got deep into drugs, and I had my own life. And I'm older now. I have friends. I've got a social life. I've got school going on. So I just basically didn't talk to him at all. And I knew that I grew up with, no mother and father in the household, and I didn't like that. And I wanted to be better for my son than my father was to me, as so I thought. So I reached out to her and I was like, "Hey, why didn't you tell me you had a child? Like, me and you had sex this long ago, and it would make sense that you got pregnant then, and this is my child." She responded back to me and said, "I promise you, this is not your baby. In fact, I've already gotten a DNA test, and I know that you're not the father. The father's name is blank." Now, I don't remember the guy's name. She told me first was the dad. And I say first, this story gets crazy. Basically, I was like, okay, but a little bit of like relief came over me because I'm thinking like, I just graduated high school. I have really no ambitions to go to college, and I really don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I came from a poor area. I wasn't ready to have a child yet. But nonetheless, something told me there's no way this girl's telling the truth. So what I did was I looked up the guy's name she told me was the father on Facebook. And I saw right away this was like this huge guy, like I think he was a linebacker and he played for high school football. He was like the star football player. People were talking about him being drafted. He had all these newspaper articles written about him being like the next best thing out of Erie, Pennsylvania. He went to school at McDowell. They were a fierce football team. They were the best football team in my city. So I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, Caitlin says that you got a DNA test and that you're the father, and I just wanted to reach out to you and make sure that was true." This guy texts me back immediately, and he's like, "Hey, where do you live? I want to stop by real quick and talk to you." And I'm thinking like, okay, this is a pretty big guy. Like, even though I could fight, this guy's 3 times my size, plays football, and is going on to be a professional football player. I don't know about this, but I'm just going to go for it anyways, whatever. What's the worst that can happen? He's coming to my house, so we'll see. He ends up pulling up in this car that probably cost as much as my mom's house at the time. And he ends up being this super cool dude. I get in the passenger seat. We start talking. He looks at me immediately. He's like, dude, that's your son. And I'm like, what? He's like, we did not have a DNA test. She wants it to be my baby because they're talking about drafting me into the NFL. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, I've seen the baby in the hospital. I think he went there because he was convinced it was his child because this crazy woman convinced him that he was the father. And it wasn't that they didn't have sex in that time frame. They did. And this story gets even crazier. He ends up pulling out a blunt and we sit there and smoke a blunt and we're talking back and forth. He's like, dude, that's definitely your kid, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. He leaves. I go in, I tell my family, I get back on Facebook, I message her again, and I'm like, why'd you lie to me? He told me that you guys didn't have a DNA test, and he told me the child looks just like me and that I'm probably the father. She says, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. He's not the father, but this other guy, Matt, is. And I don't remember Matt's last name, but I'm really not looking to put anybody on blast right now. But this Matt guy, he went to my high school. So I kind of knew of him, but I didn't really know him. I'm not going to lie, he was kind of a loser. So he wasn't like the type of guy I would have hung out with in the first place. So I'm like, okay, I don't believe this woman. She already lied to me once and said she got a DNA test. I'm just gonna, I said, I want a DNA test. She said, no, you're not getting a DNA test. You're not the father. And I'm thinking, where did this come from? Like, this girl, like, was super into me. And now some months pass, we have a baby together and she's acting all weird. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do? I asked my mom and she said, well, you can go in there and court order her to give a DNA test if there already hasn't been a DNA test proving that someone else was the father. So that's what I did. I said, I'm not going to stand here, live the rest of my life knowing that my son will never know who his dad is. I'm not going to be that person. Like, I was dead set on being the best dad that I ever could be to my son. And I was never going to let something like this happen. So I went to the courthouse, I got swabbed, and she got court mandated in to get a DNA test. I don't think it took long. I think it was about 3 weeks later, DNA test came back, and I indeed was the father. This is where the whole story flips. So let me just recap. There was three separate guys that she was in sexual relationships at the same time that she was in a relationship with me sexually. So this will tell you the type of person she is. For a woman, that's crazy. I'm not going to get into it, but that's crazy, especially for an 18-year-old woman. Nonetheless, she ends up coming over and I meet my son because I'm the dad. She does a complete 180 and now she's all about me. She wants to be together, like she wants to make a move. Let's get married, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, wait a minute, this girl's really conniving. She was having sex with four separate men at the same time. And my friend said that she tried to give him head in the bathroom at school. So I'm thinking, like, yeah, no, that's probably not going to happen. Also, you can say, oh, she had a baby, blah, blah, blah. She was about 200 pounds when she showed up at my house with my son. 200. Now, remember, I said she was about 130 pounds when we met, and she had jumped up to 200 pounds. And this is not even close to where she's going to end up. So stay tuned. I'm thinking, like, I'm just not going to bring it up. We're just going to, spend time together. I'm going to be able to see my son, yada, yada. A little bit of time passes and she eventually brings it up. She's like, I want to be together. And I'm like, look, we don't really know each other that well. This happened from a one night stand. And quite frankly, you did a lot of shady things when I was trying to be involved in my son's life. I missed out on 3 months of his life because you were in denial that I was the father. So, pardon me if I don't want to jump into a relationship with you. And you could tell it kind of hit her hard. She was not happy about this. She had in the back of her head this mindset that, like, she was just going to have this white picket fence family and we were just going to go right off into the sunset together, regardless of her being extremely promiscuous for a very long time when we were making my child. So I don't know where she got this deranged thought from, but nonetheless, that's what she thought. Eventually, she came to me. Now, mind you, I will say that I ended up getting a job at a steel company. I was a computer programmer in high school. I was actually the star computer programmer in high school. I was probably the best computer programmer that ever went to that high school. I went to a technical high school, so 3.5, 4 hours of my day we were spent doing the normal classes, math, science, social studies, reading. And then the other 3.5 hours was spent being a programmer. And so I ended up getting this job at a local steel place, like a steel manufacturing plant. And the thought process was I was going to go work in the shop and learn how the operations work. And then eventually they would move me into the office where I could code software to basically do their blueprinting so that, you have a blueprint, like a CAD software sheet that kind of shows you exactly where to make cuts and holes and stuff on these steel beams that we were manufacturing. And so I started working there. I was making about $16 an hour and I was 18 years old. People thought like I had the best job ever. Nobody my age was making that kind of money. It was unheard of. So once I was doing this job, I was working third shift. It was extremely physically demanding, and I was working from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. and I was beat after work. I mean, this is extremely hard work. Anyone who's worked in a steel shop knows it is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever do in your life. But I did enjoy it. It was fulfilling. I made a lot of money. Life was good. So my baby mama comes up to me one day and she says, "Hey, I need to apply for food stamps. And in order to do that, Pennsylvania law requires me to put you on child support." And I'm thinking, like, why are you getting on put on food stamps? Mind you, I had been to her house, her parents' house, and they're extremely wealthy, like absurdly wealthy. Her stepdad was a pharmaceutical rep or something like that, and her mom worked really high up in one of those like FedEx or UPS as like a general manager. She would oversee like three or four different facilities. So combined, they probably made like $350,000 a year together. And she's talking about getting on food stamps. I'm thinking this is very bizarre. She's actually in college to be a nurse or something. I don't remember exactly what she was going to school for, but I'm pretty sure it was nursing. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Child support, this was bound to happen. Whatever. What is it? Like $200 a month. It doesn't take much to raise a child. I know that because I'm currently raising a 2-year-old girl, and it's not very expensive to raise them. It's not like absorbent amounts of money at all. So nonetheless, she puts me on child support, and I was not prepared for this. I'm thinking like, oh, $200 a month, 250, something like that, something reasonable where I'd still be able to survive. I was so wrong. I get put on child support. I go to the hearing. They say they're going to put me on child support, whatever. I get my first check where they took my child support out. I'm looking at it. I was making $16 an hour. The government came in and took 22%, and then she came in and took 55% of the remaining balance. So let's say I made $1,000, the government took 220, that left me with $780, and then she took 55% of that, which is about, let's just say 390, somewhere around there, $400. It left me with about $385 after all was said and done. Now I have a great job. I'm making more money than everyone else, and I'm bringing home less money than someone working full time at McDonald's. I cannot explain to you how detrimental this is to a young man working extremely hard, doing everything right, trying to be the right person, a good person, be there for their son, and then to get told that we're going to take 55% of your income for 18 years. and up to like 24 years if your child goes to college. I'm the typical man, I don't cry much. And when I got my paycheck and I saw how much the balance was, tears rolled down my face. I'm thinking I got this amazing job. I'm going to be able to buy a car and go get an apartment. And yeah, all that went down the drain. I could maybe afford a car and car insurance and then afford to feed myself and clothe myself. And that was about it. I couldn't afford to get an apartment to pay utilities. I couldn't afford anything. So I was stuck at my mom's house. And me and my mom had issues because I resented her for the terrible life I had growing up, especially because my mom made like $100,000 a year from the age that I was like 12 to 18 and still would refuse to take me into regular dentist appointments and get my teeth fixed, causing a ton of problems that I suffer from today. She had a ton of money, but she would rather spend it, which now I know, she spent it gambling. She would gamble her money away. She was in a lot of debt because she was financially irresponsible, so she was paying towards debts and student loans, and then she was gambling the excess money. So I got nothing out of it. I did not have a much better life because my mom was making a lot of money. She was very irresponsible and she didn't do much for me at all. Nonetheless, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I'm thinking like, okay, I already have the best job out of anyone I know my age. Where else could I go work where I could go make more money than this? Mind you, I'm from the poorest zip code in the United States at the time, and there was really no answer. There was no answer. I was already in the best job that I could get at the time, and that was just the end of it. So yeah. Nonetheless, me and her were still in good standings. I told her, I think, like, hey, I can't even survive with this much money. She says, I'm sorry, it's expensive to raise a child. And I didn't really know how much money it was. I was 18 years old. I'd never raised a child before. So I didn't question it when she said she needed all that money. But she wasn't working, of course. She didn't have a job. She was living off of my child support and going to school and raising our child. So naturally, I talked to my mom about it. I'm like, how am I supposed to survive? She says, you need to go in and ask for custody. And if you get custody, they will basically change your support to reflect the custody. I said, well, that makes sense. I'm the dad. Naturally, I should have 50-50 custody with her because I'm a father and she's the mother. We both did half the amount of work. I should have my son half the amount of time, and then I wouldn't be on child support at all. I would just have to pay for my child when he's living with me for half the time rather than giving her hundreds of dollars a month to live and raise my child, which sounds correct, right? Well, let me tell you something. The Pennsylvania court system, and this is true for most places in the United States, but I'm speaking specifically about Pennsylvania, is I went to go get a custody hearing. And actually, let me backtrack and tell you what happened before that. Uh, actually, she ended up going to a party with me and I say she, my baby mom, went to a party with me. And this is when I was like testing the waters to see if I was going to end up dating her. We had a babysitter. I believe my sister and my mom were watching our son. We went to this party and they're rolling a blunt. And that's just what people did my age back then. And it gets to her. She grabs it and starts hitting it. And I'm like, oh, she's cool. I'm like, this is good. This is good news. Step in the right direction. So it gets to me. I hit it. We sit there, smoke, chill, hang out. We sober up, we come back home. I think nothing of it. And then fast forward a little bit longer. I told you guys I was working third shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So after my shift at work, I would immediately come home and crash. I would be in the deepest sleep you could possibly imagine for about 8 hours. Then I would stay up for the afternoon because that's when everybody else is up and I could actually still have a social life and still be able to hang out with my son and then still go to work that night. So one random day, I'm in my house, my mom's house. I'm in my mom's house. She's not there. I get home from work. I take my clothes off. I'm covered in black stuff. So, like every single day, I'm literally covered from head to toe. My face is black. I'm blowing black stuff out of my nose. So, I get in the shower, put my clothes in the dirty laundry. I get in my bed and I go to sleep. I wake up about 2 hours later. My baby mom is in my room. I didn't invite her in my house. She was in my room holding my son who was screaming, crying his head off. And I wake up and I'm like, not even fully awake because, again, dude, this job is very hard. And she's like, Mason was trapped in between the bed and the wall. He had rolled off the bed. You didn't even wake up. I'm taking him to the hospital. And all this is happening really fast. And I'm thinking, like, wait, let me look at him. Like, okay, he's got a little red mark on his head, but like, why are you rushing him to the hospital? I don't get too much time to think. She ends up rushing off to the hospital. And then it hits me. I'm like, wait, why was she even in my house? Like, who invited her in? No one invited her in. She just walked into my house. She thought it was okay because we have a child together. Put my son into a bed with me while I'm sleeping. And I had no knowledge of this while she was in my living room, which, mind you, is about 7 feet away from the bedroom I was sleeping in. And she's looking up bus routes for some reason. So she goes to the hospital and I'm like kind of dazed, confused. I'm like, I don't even know what happened. I'm going back to sleep. I go back to sleep. I wake up. We talk, and I'm like, so what happened? Is he okay? Yeah, he's fine. He just had a little red mark on his head. And I was like, why did you take him to the hospital? Like, that didn't seem like something to take him to the hospital for. She was like, well, head injuries can be very serious, and you don't want to risk if he got a concussion or not. And I'm thinking, like, okay, but like, you couldn't have taken that long to get into the bedroom after he started crying because you're right in my living room, which is, it takes 2 seconds to walk from the living room to the bedroom. Let me get a drink real quick. She's like, yeah, it's fine, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, whatever, it's over. Not a big deal. Fast forward, we're about to have a custody hearing. So we're texting back and forth. We're still on good terms at this point. I don't think anything's wrong at this point. We're talking back and forth, and I'm like, well, I want to get custody because I'm the father. I think I'm deserving of the right to have custody. She agrees. We end up coming up with a plan where, like, 1 week I have him 3 days, 3 full days, day and night. He spends night at my house 3 days. Then the next week it's 4 days, 3 days, 4 days. We alternate holidays. She agrees to everything. Then fast forward to the date where we go in to speak with our mediator. I walk in, I'm there first, filling out my paperwork, and I'm sitting there. She walks in with this huge guy, this like, the guy was a giant in this big, really nice, fancy suit. I don't know what's going on. I assume I'm in a courthouse. This is just some random lawyer or somebody who works in the courthouse coming to speak with someone who is at this particular area where I was. No, he walks directly up to me, reaches his hand out, and says, hey, are you Rob? Or you must be Rob, something like that. And I'm like, yeah, who are you? I don't shake his hand back because I don't know what's going on. He's like, hi, I'm representing representing Caitlin. I'm her lawyer, and we're here. And I'm like, why does she have a lawyer? We already agreed on something. Or you tell me she just blindsided me with the lawyer? He smirks, walks away, and I'm thinking, like, man, I'm heated. I can't tell you how mad I am right now because I know something fishy's up. I don't know what it is. They sit on the opposite side of the room with me. I don't know what's going on. We get into the custody hearing, and guess what? This is when it all gets laid down. She says, well, he smokes weed. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, wait a minute. She was at that party with me. She hit it too. Then I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, what if she didn't hit it? What if she pretended to hit it? And that's exactly what she did. She pretended to hit it, or she took some drink that, cleans her system out. And so I'm just sitting there, just starstruck at the moment. I don't know what to do. I'm dumbfounded. And I'm like, that's BS. Like, they're trying to say I'm unfit because I smoke weed. She was like, also, I dropped him off at his house, our son off at his house. And in that time, my son got trapped between a bed and a wall and injured his head, and I had to take him to the hospital. And he didn't even wake up and do anything about it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. She pulls out the hospital report where she told the hospital that I was watching my son, that I had the custody of him when he got hurt, and that I didn't wake up and it was my fault. And I'm sitting here like it's hitting me. Like everything is hitting me at once. I'm being blasted. My head is understanding it now. I'm like, holy crap, this has all been a setup. Like I'm in the matrix right now. Like this can't be real. I'm furious. I'm getting mad at this point. The mediator's there, basically telling me like, calm down. I'm like, calm down. They're trying to take my son away from me. Nonetheless, I'll tell you what happened. We left the hearing, and they gave me 1 day a week for 3 hours, supervised because of my previous incident with my son getting trapped between the bed and the wall. Regardless of me saying that that's not true, she put him in my bed without my knowledge. She basically broke into my house without my knowledge and did it. None of that mattered. I didn't have proof of it, so who cares, right? It's a woman's world, right? So the mediator ends up that's what they agreed on. It was moderated at my grandmother's house, and I took it because what am I going to do? She said, if you don't accept this now, you're not going to get any custody until the court hearing. So I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm being strong armed right now to not be able to see my son, but for 3 hours a week, monitored, supervised by my grandmother at her house. Unbelievable, huh? And I don't care if you guys believe me. I do not care. I literally don't care. I know that I'm telling you guys the truth. You could choose to believe any part of this you want. I'm not making up these events. This is all honest to God truth. I put my right hand on the Bible, on my mother's life, on my child's life, that I am not exaggerating any of this. I'm not exaggerating it. I'm not making up things that didn't happen. Every single thing that I'm telling you right now happened to me, and I guarantee it happened to someone else too. So, nonetheless, I took it. We had a court hearing scheduled, and believe it or not, I at the time was like, my whole life was crashing down. I was severely not in a good mental state. They basically, the state drove me crazy because I could only see my son 3 hours a day or a week, and they were taking all of my money from my hard work, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I'm thinking, well, how am I going to supplement my income? Because I don't make enough money to survive. I'm not on good footing with my mom because she's a narcissist and she thinks that she's always right and never did anything wrong. And she did the best she could raising us. So I wasn't on good footing with her, and nobody in my family was willing to step up and help me. Now, mind you, I had some family members who had a decent amount of money. Both of my grandparents on my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, made well over $100,000 a year. None of them helped me. None of them offered to help me afford a lawyer. Nobody offered any help. None. They were there emotionally, but they would not reach into their pockets to help me, regardless of me being their flesh and blood. And my mom made over $100,000 a year, and she would not reach into her pocket and help me afford a lawyer. No one would help me. And granted, you could say, well, it's my fault. I did this. But I did this as a minor. This all happened when I was a minor. I was under the roof of my mother. My mother was still my legal guardian. I was still a child according to the law when this all happened. So you can say whatever you want, but you know, how much accountability can I really take for the way I was raised? I don't know. That's up for you guys to decide. I don't care if you're mean to me in the comments, say whatever you want. I want to know your opinions on this. But nonetheless, I was in a bad state of mind and I was thinking, what am I going to do to make money? And I thought, well, I'm just going to go back to my roots. I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody sold drugs and that's how people made money. And I remember people being able to thrive doing it. So that's what I'm going to start doing. So I got my paycheck. I bought a few ounces of weed and I started selling drugs. And I also was smoking weed at the time. And of course, I went to work one day and I got hurt on the job. A, a dye exploded I was using a press where there's this like metal drill that shoots a hole through this piece of steel, and there's a circle at the bottom that it goes through, and you gotta position the die correctly. Well, when you're doing it for so long, eventually the die can shift just a little bit, just the tiniest amount, and it could cause it to explode. So what happened was I pressed the button, the machine came down, it had shifted, and it exploded. I don't know if you can see this, but I think it's on this side of my neck, right here. A piece of steel shot through my neck, apparently at the speed of a 22 bullet, shot all the way through my neck. I was bleeding from my neck. I went to the hospital. They drug tested me and they fired me shortly afterwards. Um, Even though it wasn't my fault. I mean, maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't, doing it exactly the right way, but I had been working there for a while. I think it was the machine that malfunctioned, but nonetheless, I got fired. So my only income was selling weed, which is not on the books, and I wasn't making a fortune doing it. I wasn't like some kingpin. I was making hundreds of dollars a week, maybe, but it was supplemental. So I went back to my child support. I asked for a reduction in my child support, and guess what? In the state of Pennsylvania, if you are fired from a job due to a fault of your own, they can hold you at the same financial responsibility as what you were making at that previous job, even if you cannot find another job to pay you that much money. So, guess what? They didn't reduce my child support. They were not legally obligated to lower my child support because I was fired. They were going to hold me at the exact same standard. So, they're holding me at like, I don't know, $675 a month, and I don't have a job making over $9 an hour. So guess what? They could only legally take 55% of my paycheck, so that's what they did. Every single paycheck, 55% was taken out, no matter what. And the amount of money that I was not able to pay, because say my paycheck is $400, they take 55% of it, that's 200 and something dollars a week. If that doesn't, or like, let's just say a month, and because there's $400 left over that I still owe, even though they can only legally take 55%, I have $400 tacked on to what's called an arrears. And arrears is what you don't, when you don't pay child support, it doesn't just go away, it piles up in this account where you owe more money. So not only am I still working full time, my arrears is piling up, and I am still paying child support, and I still only can see my son 3 hours a week. So now I'm like asking my family, can anybody help me get a lawyer so I could go into a custody hearing and actually have a fair chance of getting 50% custody? I end up having another mediation hearing. My family says no, by the way, nobody has money to help me out. So I go into another mediation and I'm thinking, well, I have to do something. I'm going to represent myself. And I went into the mediation and I was like, I think I should have 50-50 custody. I'm the father. I had stopped smoking weed for that period of time, so my drug test would come back clean. And they said, well, that's not really how it works. And I'm like, why not? I should be afforded half the rights because I am the other parent. Why would she automatically get more rights than me? And they were like, that's just how the system works. And even if you were to get 50-50 custody, that wouldn't affect your child support at all. I said, what? I said, so you're telling me if I have my son half the amount of time, I would still pay child support? Yeah, because he primarily lives with the mother. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense if I have him 50% of the time. Like, I'm very good at math. I have him 50%, she has him 50%. How in the world would I owe her money after that? That's just how it works. Matter of fact, you would have to have more than 55% of the custody in order for us to even consider that in your child support case. How ridiculous does that sound? And I said, okay, well, how would I go about doing that? Well, they said, well, it's basically impossible unless you can prove that she's an unfit parent. But the problem is she wasn't an unfit parent. So it was basically impossible. And basically, even if I had my son 50% of the time and I was responsible for everything that cost money while he was with me, I would still have to pay her 55% of my income. for 18 years. People are going to think this is fake. This is real. This is how they ruined the entire world with this. Do you know how many men were in my position? So I'm still selling weed at the time, trying to make some sort of money. And sorry, I'm having some lags there. I'm trying to make some money. And eventually, guess what? My luck, I get caught. I get arrested and I go to jail and they throw the book at me and I'm spending time in jail and I'm at the lowest of low that I've ever been in my life. I mean, I'm at the absolute lowest of low. I'm contemplating suicide every single day at this point. And I'm in prison. I don't know if anybody's ever been to jail, but it's not a good time. And I'm in jail for marijuana, for 2 ounces of marijuana. I'm in jail for it. While I'm in jail contemplating suicide, the worst, literally the worst time of my life, a lawyer comes in, calls me from my cell, sits me down at a table, and says, "Hey, man, sorry to hear about what happened to you. This sucks. Caitlin is willing to offer you a way out." And I said, "What?" Now, mind you, I had went to jail a few times before that for failure to pay child support because I was not employed, and because I had a record, I wasn't able to be employed. It was very hard to find a job, and they arrest you for that, for being poor in America. If you're a poor man in America, you get arrested for that. Yeah, but the mother can be poor, live on the street with their children, and not be arrested for that. So that just goes to show you the crazy world we live in. I was being arrested for being poor, and basically they said, Caitlin's willing to offer you a way out. If you sign your rights away today, we will remove your rights. You will not have any rights over your child anymore, but she will get rid of your child support obligation and she will also forgive all of the arrears you owe. Now, mind you, my son's like 3 at the time. It's the hardest time of my life. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to I'm going to try not to break down while I'm saying this, but the hardest time of my life. I'm literally in jail, lowest of low, and they're telling me they're gonna forgive it all. I'm like $14,000 in arrears, even though I was paying child support for the majority of it. I wasn't paying my amount because I didn't make enough money to pay that amount. My arrears were piling up. I was not able to be employed anywhere good. I had a drug charge on my record now. I couldn't get a good job anywhere if I wanted to, despite me being a brilliant programmer. I mean, when I say I took second place in the nation in a computer programming contest when I was in 11th grade for creating the first calculator in the world to factor quadratic equations and show the computer would show how it was solving the equation. I took second place in the nation by myself against teams of people in high schools and colleges. It didn't matter because I was a straight white male. And no one was going to come and offer me a scholarship somewhere. Hey, yeah, we're gonna help you succeed in life because you've done so well. You've done things that are remarkable. Now that didn't happen to me because I wasn't some black kid, some underprivileged black kid in America who was also a brilliant programmer. Nobody came out to offer me anything. Nothing. You know what I got from that? A plaque that said I took second place and $100 check. $100. No college reached out. No school at all reached out. No one reached out. No one cared. It didn't matter to them. They probably assumed I had a good family who was going to take care of me. They were wrong. Nonetheless, I took it. I took the deal. I thought, well, I'm probably going to end up dead if I keep going at this rate. I mean, I can't afford to live somewhere. I'm going to be homeless. Most of my income's going to be taken for the rest of my life, and I signed my rights away. And that That's not the final say so. You have to go to court after that. So I waited for my sentence to end. I got out of jail. I was happy that I got out of jail. I survived. I went down to the courthouse when my court hearing was, and I signed the papers. And then eventually I think they have to wait like 30 days for me to change my mind. But at that point, I wasn't going to change my mind. And the craziest part was my whole family was so mad at me for it. My grandparents, my mom, my other grandparents. How could you do that? And I would say to them, are you serious? I asked you guys for help. Nobody helped me. Nobody dug in their pockets to help me get a lawyer. Nobody helped me. Nobody offered me a penny to get a lawyer to fight for my right to see my child. No one helped me. So you can shut up and don't bring it up again. And that's how strict I was with my family. Don't even talk to me about it. You disgust me. How dare you? Do you know what I've been through? None of you helped me. Not a single person. And believe me, they bought new cars. They made sure they had a nice house. They bought a pool and put it in their backyard. But guess what they couldn't afford? A few $1,000s for me to get an attorney so that my life wouldn't be miserable. And nobody did it. Nobody offered any help. Not a person. Not my mom, not my grandmother, not my grandfather, not my other grandmother, not my other grandfather, not my dad. No one. Not a single person helped me. And it's whatever. They're not obligated to help me, but they definitely don't have the right to say something to me about me signing my rights away. And I still hold so much hatred for that moment. But nonetheless, I've moved past it. I have a beautiful wife now. I've got a beautiful 2-year-old daughter that I'm able to be a part of her life. My life has changed for the good. I'm moving on. My son's 14 years old, probably doesn't even remember me. But you know what? I'm surviving. And when he's 18, I hope he believes me. I hope he stumbles across this and says, that's my dad. That really happened to you? And I'll tell him, yeah, that really happened to me. And it kills me every single day. People don't look at me and see all the pain and hurt that I go through because I'm a man. I'm not supposed to be walking around crying, woe is me all the time. I don't tell this story to anybody, but I know there's someone that was in my shoes. I just want you to know that the system is against you. They don't care about you. They're not going to help you. No one's going to save you. If you have the chance, get out for yourself and for your son or for your daughter. Because one day, hopefully they come back. Hopefully they want to hear your side of the story. And hopefully they believe you. But that's all out of your control. And thankfully, I have my faith. I have God. I've prayed about it. I know that this is a fallen world and that this is not going to be a good time here on earth with all these fallen people. And you can't expect someone to help you. No one's going to save you, buddy. No one's going to save you. You have to pull yourself up by your straps. Do one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do in your life, but you're going to survive. And that's all that's important. You need to survive. You need to do what's best for yourself because this current system is meant to destroy men. My father, remember the one I told you about? Strung out on drugs. You think I had it bad? He had it worse than me. My mom's a narcissistic, crazy person, and he had to deal with her. He also has 2 other children by one of the craziest people you'll ever meet in your life, like an actual psychotic person. Meth user, abuses her kids, will slash your tires, will try to kill you. She would murder you if she had the chance, like an actual psychotic person. And he spent 18 years, nobody, in order to sign your rights away, the other party has to agree to it. And believe me, they weren't ready to agree to sign that paycheck away. So my dad had to buck it up and spend about 24 years of his life losing half of his paycheck, unable to afford an apartment or anything. And he had a good job, a good shop job that most people were able to survive and buy a house and live wonderfully with the shop job in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1970 and 1980. But guess what? Those jobs were long gone. They went overseas. And this is what radicalized me. This is why I'm a hardcore Republican, conservative. This is why I have the views that I have. Not because I'm some hateful person, because I know the system is rigged against people who look like me. And it has been that way for 30 years, minimal 40 years. This whole system of child support that you automatically grant the woman custody, that the man is 99% of the time the one who pays child support. You think that's fair? You think that's just? I don't think so. Anyways, I'm done. I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to leave it raw and unfiltered. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to host a show starting soon where I talk about politics and I talk about things that need to change in this world so people like me and people like you don't struggle to survive. Anyways, drop a like, drop a comment, please subscribe. If you want to help me out, that would be fantastic. I plan on doing this out of the kindness of my heart and because I know there's other people like me currently struggling with no way out. Suicide rates are at an all-time high for young men. The world is not built for you anymore, and we need to take that back one step at a time. Anyways, until next time, bye bye.